And me out there. Hey guys, welcome to another session with DJ. Now, this session is not just another 750. Clearly, I wanted to bring you guys more value. Welcome to the session again. I wanted to start this session off with a quote from Batman. Um, the the quote is something that you would have heard. The night is darkest before the dawn. This is for all the folks out there in India who are suffering all those hardships that we know about. And I just want you guys to know that things are going to get better, and we all stand together in this enormous hardship. And yeah, we're right here for you. Reach out to me or e-GMAT if you need anything at all. And again, welcome to another session. So this session is a very interesting one because there are a lot of things that we have during our preparation, getting to 710, 720, 750, which we kind of forget about. And then these are the biggest value adding points that make you a 90th percentile scorer. So if you find yourself to be in the category where you find it really hard or that inertia to get to the study table, that's probably one of the biggest hardships that a student faces to really get to studying for the GMAT. If you can do this, you can frankly score any score you want as long as you get to studying. The second thing is you may study, but you may do it intermittently. So you study for 2 3 days, then you forget about it for another 2 3 days, and then when you take a quiz over the weekend, you may not do well. So you tend to lose a lot of faith in your own abilities, a lot of that grasp of what you know actually comes from what you do reiteratively. So remember that it's very important to be consistent with your studies, and that's what this session is about. Getting 750 is super hard. Very few people across the world, so 2,500 odd people get it, and it's very important to understand how to start, how to really get there, and what the journey really looks like. So what this session is going to be is it's going to be footsteps in the path of a 750 scorer. And then these are the footsteps that you want to follow to ensure that you get to your target. The very first step to really getting to or imagining or visualizing that you want to score a 750 is motivating yourself. What motivates you? We live in such uncertain times. All of you would have seen, all of you, those who are in India, would have seen unbearable hardship around you. But motivating yourself to really get to go and give an exam that is as daunting as this one can be probably one of the biggest challenges that we face right now. And this, for me, I think, is the starting point of your preparation, is just making sure that you motivate yourself. This is the dream, right? This is where you want to go. And if this is where you want to go, you need to find that one thing that motivates you day in and day out. Put it in front of you, read it, see it, do whatever you have to again and again to make sure that you realize this dream. And it's this fuzzy motivation that Stanish really had that kind of really got him to the 750, and it was nothing else. And this seems like a very intractable term, intangible, but we'll make it very tangible for you. The very first question that a lot of students ask me is, and again, this is the first footstep after your self-motivating piece, is what do I do? Like, where do I start? What am I supposed to do? And it can be slightly crazy. So what you need to have is set a tentative date in mind. And this is again going to be a function of when you plan to apply for business school. Do your research, do your due diligence, make sure that you know your dates inside out, and make sure that you pick the right model for you. And then this is where the important bit comes in, right? So a lot of people are used to studying from books. A lot of people are used to studying from private tutors and so on and so forth. You need to find the right thing that works for you. We're all very different. Finding that right model that really makes sure that you have that sort of constant support and feedback is very important. These two things in turn are the second footstep that kind of improve your success rate. Now, you can divide the GMAT population into two halves. So people who work with data and without data. And this is where the model that you're using becomes very important. There are certain platforms that give you data, but that data is not very insightful. And there's certain students who don't work with data at all. Now, it's not like these students are not successful, right? Because some students are innately just smart, and 10% of these guys go on to score 720 plus as well. But what you're trying to do with data, and again, with the proper study plan, proper method, is you're trying to improve your chances of success. You're just improving it by 10%, 20, 30, 40, 50%. and you need to do it with the right study model and the right person standing beside you, whether it's someone who is doing it objectively or someone within your foray of friends, right? So essentially, or doing all of these things, having a proper study plan, working with data, and getting feedback, that objective feedback, is what really improves your chances of success as a student. So if you want to know the mantra to success, the first footsteps are very simple. Let me reiterate it for you. Make sure that you're self motivated, make sure that you understand when you want to give the GMAT, why you want to give it, and find a model that works for you. And then make sure that you're getting feedback across your entire journey, right? Now, Stanish is here with us and then we're going to pick his brain for his inner success map. So, again, let's put it together for Stanish, who's a special guest for today, and he's going to be doing most of the talking, and he's going to take you through the entire process of how he managed to score the 750, and it's going to be pretty much the same thing. So let's go into conversation with Stanish. Welcome. You're not in India, but still welcome, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you, DJ. And just wanted to reach out, as DJ pointed out, sending lots of love and support to all of those in India. There is definitely light, and sending a lot of prayers for all of you. So without further ado, back into the session. I grew up and I was born in India, and now I'm based out in Austria. I work in the tech sector, so I work with the automotive industry development, but I'm also very much passionate about negotiations and entrepreneurship. And I consider it a mission to have impact on how the world is being framed. So I see myself working towards impact entrepreneurship with negotiations as one of my focus areas.
So tell us one thing no one knows about you.
I like to be woken up when I'm sleeping. It's kind of weird, but I'm just excited.
That's a very weird thing. Because I would be very grumpy if someone wakes me up when I'm sleeping. So, I mean, how do you like to be woken up? This is a very weird question again, but still.
I like excitement, buzz about good ideas, and new things to do. And I always liked it when my friends back in the US, they used to call me like middle of the night and like had this crazy idea. It just gives me a kick, and I enjoy people having things to do, new ideas, and that always gives me an energy to contribute more. And yeah.
Interesting. So let's talk about that first footstep, right? The first footstep in your journey. It started off long time back in 2019, right?
Yeah.
So what is that fuzzy motivation for you?
In the beginning, I mean, it was a huge mistake that I made. I didn't really understand what I was doing or why I was doing it. GMAT was just an essential step towards getting a score, and that was not on a priority list. So that was a sort of mistake. Maybe I can get a 780 and seven. At that point, I just wanted to get a 720, right? Like just a check. And maybe was the motivation. That did not clearly work. That was getting me nowhere. I thought I was in that ballpark range of 700, 720. And I thought, okay, I'll do a month's preparation. That's then a sure shot. I'm going to get 720 plus. That's enough. And there was no clear motivation of why I had this. And then that really reflected in my performance. After a point of time, I had to stop myself and really think, why am I spending the time? Where is it going to get me? And what do I really want out of it? And once I had that goal clearer, I had to come back and know, okay, this is exactly what I want to get in my GMAT, and this is how much effort I need to put inside. And that motivation began to sharpen. And also the second aspect of this is just watching e-GMAT. I mean, I'm very happy that this idea bore so much fruit. Like, people coming out and sharing their stories is a huge motivation. And for me, GMAT has not been like a sprint. It's been a marathon. I've been doing it like for a year and a half almost. And there are so many phases when it just pushes you down. You're so weak. And those are the times when stories like this gets shared, and it inspires you and motivates you, gives you a perspective why you're doing it. And having that, like just listening to Rajat, Payal, and you and all of the team from the e-GMAT talking about the GMAT experience, it just drove and rekindled those passion I had back as a kid learning math. I loved math. I loved physics. I also love languages, and building that passion back, it just changed my perspective, that it was just no longer about the exam and marks itself. It was a transformation in me, that I wanted to be better at, solving problems fast. I wanted to be better at critically thinking fast. These are life skills that I've taken out, and that made my motivation really, really sharp. And it really helped me when there were other challenges. So for all of you yes people out there who are really like saying yes to different things, saying a yes means saying no to 100 different things, and that doesn't have to be a GMAT score. So I wanted to say yes to my GMAT and be able to say no to the other things. So all my motivation had to be on my GMAT experience. So
So I think the biggest takeaway from what you just said is that you literally had to put everything on the back burner for your GMAT score. Like that is the amount of parochial commitment it takes to really
yeah,
get a good GMAT score. I think that's the biggest takeaway there. The second takeaway is that we constantly need to be motivated throughout our journey. For you, it was e-GMAT videos. Someone else, it could be, a friend who scored really well, who keeps motivating them that you're gonna do really well. Carry on, just keep at it. Because there's that the thing with students is that you study one day. For example, you studied sentence correction today. You take a quiz in 4 days. You don't do well on it. You feel like the entire world is crumbling down. So it's the aspect of failing after putting in the time is worse than actually not putting in the time and saying, I didn't study, so it's fine, it's absolutely okay. Tell me something, Stanish. So you work really hard across the week, and I kind of resonate. This resonates really, really strongly with me. You have a 60-hour work week. I want you to explain everything you do. How did you manage to kind of fit in studies into your schedule? So I want you to share how you did that with everybody over here. So because there's a bunch of students who do face this issue, they don't know how to study, when to study with a really hectic work day.
Right. So just to give a background, so my work week is like my work itself is like 40 hours. I spend 40 hours there, and apart from that, I do a lot of side projects. I run a negotiation team. We're doing an EU project, and I also I'm part of the startup circle with entrepreneurship, and I also work as a volunteering blogger at Hub. So even if I just spend 10 hours each, that's already like shooting 70 hours plus my language and all of that. So my week is generally really packed, and to carve out that time for GMAT becomes really, really crucial. And I had to pick up like skills so that I don't get carried away and get lost, because that's something that often happens. So a lot of you, I'm guessing, are in a similar situation where you have different commitments that you want to tussle with, and having that centered focus, just prioritizing, okay, this is a target that I want to reach end of the month. Okay, what is my priority for a week? I was constantly jostling. So that is something that can really help to really plan your month and your week backwards and say, okay, at the end of the month, I want to be there. What are my priorities? And I had to take really, really hard decisions at times, really, really hard decisions. And that also involved at some point, like, okay, putting a stop to my GMAT preparation and knowing, okay, that will have a consequence on my admits. So I'm also pushing my admit dates. So I had to take that decision. I knew that to give my couple of months for another project that I was at that time working on. I had to give myself that. And then I came back, and then the e-GMAT and GMAT was a first priority, right? Like preparing for GMAT was a first priority. I was using e-GMAT at that point fully. So, and at that time, just the conversation I had with people also changed. In a sense, I already declared, okay, 3 hours I have my stuff to do. How do we plan around that? And my whole social circle and how things worked around me changed. So people, if they wanted to hang out with me, they'd come and they come and sit, work with me. So I had a lot of friends like literally can bring the laptop to spend time with me. That was like a holy time. Like if people wanted to meet me, they could meet me after like 9 or 9:30. So
So your study time is basically sacrosanct. Nothing
yeah,
comes in
yeah.
between your study time.
I tried to
So there's
commit.
got it. So there's two things here, right? One is your study routine after you really committed to the GMAT. That's one. We'll talk about that. But you put your GMAT studies on a hold and you came back to studying after a while. Now a lot of students have this problem. They have this stop start thing as well. Starting back again is a very big challenge. How did you do that?
Just one of the things that helped me was like drawing notes of where I was. I was not doing a really good job at it, to be honest. My notes were here and there, but then at least I did something. I knew the importance of it to chart out what I had known at that point and a rough figure of where I was. And whenever I returned back and went through that picture, I could get back to that place quite fast. And I also was very conscious of the mistakes that I was making. So I always wrote down the biggest mistakes that I was making. So be it like a simple thing that most of us do is spending a lot of time on those hard problems, like in quant section. And I knew that the probability was always kind of, quirky to me. So I start to discover things during the exam. Like, okay, I spent 6 minutes on one problem, and that was like a big mistake. You never do that, even if you need to let know how to skip your so that was a mistake. And I knew that probability was a weak point. So having that structured notes let me get back quite fast. So when I
And
really,
how did you create these notes? So were they digital? Were they handwritten? How did you do it?
I would have liked it to maintain a more digitalized version. I was more writing it in my notebooks. I did try to centralize everything in my in form of Excel sheets, but I was never really good at it. Like it is just too many Excel sheets, and um, but that's when I also wrote to the e-GMAT team to integrate the notes. And I think e-GMAT has this feature where you can write down notes, but I didn't
Yeah.
use it properly. So if for the people taking e-GMAT, it could be beneficial to also centralize all your learning in one single place, because I just had it all over the place, and that was quite difficult for me when I was getting back
I
to.
think that's one of the benefits of like digital learning, right? Because if I'm, let's say, studying from the OG, I'm going to start writing notes in my copy because I'm not going to, transfer stuff from the OG book into my laptop. When you're studying with like an online tool, which is frankly imperative right now, you can't get out there. It's not safe anymore, especially for people in India. You need something that kind of mirrors what a virtual classroom with a virtual mentor looks like, and you need something closest to it, frankly. And making a central repository of notes, I think, is one of the biggest keys of making sure that when you start preparing again and you've taken a break, you can just go through that and start off from where you started. Stop, sorry. So I think that's a very big point. Now, when you started back again, take me through your daily routine. How did you structure your day? How did you manage your studies between work?
So yeah, my work times was quite fixed. I always had it between 9 to 5:30, 6, and I then had all of my other projects. So that's when I had to really tussle for it. Um, where one of my takeaways also was a mistake that I was making was not really precise and clear goals. Saying, okay, at the end of the month, I want to be completely through with, be really good at SE and have that accuracy in SE. So I was not really committing to that. And I discovered that at the later stage in my preparation. So having that, so it was more target focused than the time I was going to put into it. So as much as I was more thinking about the target, then my time just altered itself. So I was more concerned to solve the problem, and then my time just somehow fit into that. And normally, as a thumb rule, I wanted to spend like 5 hours Saturday, Sundays to do like a session in the afternoon, and during the weekdays at least a couple of hours. So right before dinner, I tried to sneak in. So normally I was working between 7 to 9. And if in case some other meetings came up, then I tried to do it late into the night. But I just tried to do something every single day. And that just boosted my confidence. I was just proud of myself. Oh, I had a long day, but then still I managed to pull in that. I did that takeaway yesterday. And that just fostered my own uh, journey or my own momentum. It just kept keeping me going. And what I used to do also that really helped, might help people. I used to, because I'm a social person, I love people. Just shutting, I'm not preparing with another friend or whatever. So that space is really needed for me, right? So I just figured that I will go to a social setting like a cafe. I used to work in cafes, sit and work in cafes, because I just liked having people around me, and it felt like, oh, it was my fun time actually. And my fun was learning for GMAT. So it was just being in a cafe doing my GMAT. That was my thing. And later on, when they shut down the cafes because of Corona, I took up a shared working space where there were people working. So it was also like, like very sort of social, and I had my friends come in and join me while I was working. So all of these little things did pay a huge return of benefit, in the sense that I wasn't like forcing myself to lock myself up and wanting to get out. So
So
balance.
I think a few points here, right? And this is something that I wanted to point out before you finish, obviously. The first thing is consistently studying daily. I think I cannot emphasize enough the importance. And it's not because it's important, it's because it fosters growth, it fosters that confidence that you built in your system. So, for example, if after a 12-hour workday, you can put in half an hour of SC work or half an hour of quant work, that is an achievement. That is something in itself. And that half an hour becomes 45 minutes. That 45 minutes becomes an hour and
Yeah,
you lose yourself in it. And you did a very smart thing, by the way. So again, it's very psychological. You tricked your mind into believing that studying for the GMAT was something that was part of your daily routine, and that was a fun thing to do. That you were not resisting the
yeah,
urge to study.
yeah. Definitely. And also the fact that we really use it. I mean, I think the platform's really good. You can do it on your phone, and you can quantify, you can find your time spots, like just like a clock. You can fill in those stones with little sand, and you'd find a lot of those chunks of little sand spaces that you'd get. Like just when I'm on my tram or bus going somewhere, I get a like 10-15 minute chunk of time, right? Or when I'm doing a walk, I was comfortable like doing some stuff during walk. So I just like think about what I can do during that space of time, and use that time. And in the end, that was like, okay, even if I did not find any time at all that day, I still felt very good that, okay, I did something. Okay, during that 15-minute walk, that was one thing that I gained, and I will keep it for myself. uh, Again, the mistake that I was doing was I was not documenting it immediately, so it was sometimes getting lost. I would recommend everyone to just have like 5 minutes before you sleep, just write down your points and put a journal, buy one notebook, or maybe better, a Excel sheet where you can just type it out just before you sleep. Type it out. It's gonna be a huge benefit later on. You'll thank me, you'll thank DJ. But it's gonna be really, really useful.
Perfect. So I think just moving into the next block, right? So now we've taken our first step. We're motivated. We are starting to study. We're putting in the time, the effort. Now it comes into learning. So, and I want to talk about something very theoretical here: how to learn and how to really ace the GMAT. It comes acing the GMAT comes from deep learning. So deep learning is a lot of things people do not understand. Now, deep learning basically constitutes uh, when the human mind sees repetitive problems. For example, if you see x plus 7 is equal to 12, you've seen it a million times before. The reason you can do it so fast is because you've seen it. There's a repetitive pattern. The GMAT, however, is an adaptive exam. It's always going to throw you with something that's completely something that you've never seen before. That adapting to that situation within 30 to 45 seconds comes from deep learning, right? And that deep learning is something that I want to kind of talk about here. And This is exactly what you did. You didn't even realize it, but you were doing it, right? So it constitutes three parts, three layers when you go through stuff, when you're learning the foundation, going through concepts, stuff like that. The second part is when you're putting that into action. So you take that concept, you understand it. Now that's the repetitive pattern. So you get questions based on those concepts. So you know exactly what to do, you know where it's going. The last part is where you revise and review where you've gone wrong. Now, this is where you learn to adapt. This is where you learn to learn deeply, right? So, for example, you solved a question in a certain fashion. There's 10 other ways of doing it. Out of those 10 other ways, if you know each one of those ways, when you see a question you've never seen before, you'll use one of those ways and not just that repetitive way. How did you kind of get your head around uh, this method of learning? You did it your own way, I know, and I want you to talk about it.
I'll first talk about the mistake that I made. Like the mistake I was making constantly was my conformity bias. So I had my own biases in my way of thinking. Okay, I love physics, math, and I normally think I'm really good at CR logic and all of that. So essentially, what I assumed that okay, whatever mistake I was making was whatever, right? Like that was just because of the time or whatever. I was not paying really very detailed analysis into why that was happening. And later, at a later stage, the final stage for me was CR was the sticking problem, right? My time was taking over 2 minutes, which was crazy. The reason was I was stuck to a pattern and I was missing it out. I was missing why I'm getting the answers wrong. So going back and really understanding what is really happening here and why am I following these patterns, this questioning, like getting to the central meaning of it was something that really helped me. Not just in the GMAT
Take me
exam.
through the process. Take me through the process. So CR, right? You're saying that you went back and you reviewed it. For example, you had a CR question that you got. So two kinds of CR questions. One where you took way longer than you should have, and one which you got incorrect. What would your approach be to both of them?
What was initially happening was I always thought CR was because of the time lapse, right? I thought I was spending a little bit more time on the SE questions or whatnot, and then I didn't have enough time for CR. That was like a excuse that I was probably telling myself. I thought I was good at CR, right? And when you looked at the data, you sent me that review, and I was missing out on the really hard questions. And then just focusing there, like, why was I getting these hard questions wrong? And there was definitely a flaw in my own process, how I was visualizing it. And I was not essentially finding which was the real conclusion in each of the statements. And that's a huge learning. That was a huge learning that came up. Ooh, wait, I'm not really thinking which is the conclusion. I'm just trying to find the logic and trying to find a answer that suits, but the conclusion could be something else, right? And it's CR is very much more goal focused, and you're always towards that very specific conclusion. And that changed my game a lot. So I had to adapt my process to make sure, and then I was starting to get my accuracy high. I was starting to solve my hard questions. And then the question was, I was spending like 2 minutes on every question because of my process. How do I get that time faster? Or how do I get my time to 1 minute 30 seconds, right? Which hopefully is a good time. But I noticed then the way
So
I
how
was.
did you manage that 30-second like delta? How were you able to like bridge that gap? So are you saying that visualizing the conclusion saved you 30 seconds?
What I was doing in the beginning was identifying the conclusion, doing 2 or 3 assumptions, which normally in my process initially I was just skipping the conclusion part. I was just trying to fill in the linkages, why, and then I went through the questions, and sometimes I got it wrong when the question was hard. Of course, I fell into the trap, and When I came back, revisited, and I found that, okay, conclusions were important. And then I was trying to do those 3 assumptions. And I just found, okay, like going too much overboard with that was not making sense to my own process. Again, speaking for me, and not taking too many notes was not good for me, because I'm not the best note taker in the world. I can do things more faster in my brain. And that sort of helped me reduce my time a little bit. Noticing
So
why.
going back to the process, to how you solve the CR question, essentially helped you save 30 seconds per question on a CR question. And it also stopped you from jumping to the conclusion. This is a very normal thing that a lot of people do, by the way. They leisured jump to the conclusion and forget about whatever else is happening after that. So I think again, that's a big takeaway that when you're deep learning, the third part of deep learning is where you really go back and say, I need to create an error log. I need to create a structure where I strategically review each one of these questions that I've done. Whether it's right or wrong is immaterial. I just need to do it because I'm going to take away something that will help me solve a new question later. Solving new questions will not give you that perspective. And then I remember you haven't solved a lot of questions, right, Stanish? I think you barely done 500 odd questions. You learned with whatever you had. Do you think that is something that has value in it?
Sure. I mean, I was kind of feeling bad, because I keep seeing people solving the whole, like the OG books, and I bought all of these books. I have all of these books here. I mean, I never really used them. That was the problem. I'm like, fuck, I want to. I mean, I'm seeing all of these people like solving so many questions, and I only use the e-GMAT platform to solve questions. I maybe because it was the only platform that was convenient for me. So once I bought into e-GMAT, I only used that platform. All the others were not really used. I mean, I was not using too many platforms, because so I could have my focus centered, and I knew my progress. And I was only solving questions from the GMAT platforms, and that itself took a lot of time. So when I wanted to go through each of the questions, and there was a lot of learning. Okay, why is that? Especially in SC, you do a lot of learning by just going through the answers that the test that you took or whatnot. The right answers, okay, why are they right? But the wrong answers, all the 4 wrong answers, why are they wrong? And oftentimes you miss out on all the reasons why they could be wrong, right? And sometimes you keep wondering, oh fuck, I didn't even think of that. And that's okay, that's a new learning. Okay, next time I should eliminate for that specific reason. And that was the major part of my learning. And I really did not understand how people solve so many questions, because I did not have that time. If I had to go through a question set that I solve and take away like good learning, I did not understand how people solve 100 questions. And maybe at that point I was thinking, okay, it's just a flaw in my process. I'm just too fucking slow. But then
I think it's a simple logic, right, Stanish? So, for example, you solve 100 questions. That doesn't leave you a lot of time to go back to every one of the 100 questions to figure out, all right, why did I get this right or wrong? And that's where the flaw in that process exists, right? Because you don't leave yourself time to deep learn. And I think that's very, very important. So if you solve one fourth or even half of that question amount, for example, you solve 50, and you give the same amount of time to really understand those questions, why they were made, why you could go wrong on them, you would learn 2x the amount. And people often go wrong. They say that I've gotten 5 questions wrong. I want to practice 50 to fix this. That's not the fix. That is not how you deep learn. And it's not how you're going to do well on the GMAT, because at some point in time, you're going to exhaust all resources out there, everything, all questions. And the GMAT is still going to come up with a new question. What are you going to do then? Nothing, right? You wouldn't be able to solve it because you've never deep learned. So I think that has value. Now let's move on to the last bit. So um, coming closer to your prep, so 30 to 45 days before your test, you were constantly talking to me, you were constantly working out on things. How did you plan your prep in a more focused way towards your exam, closer to your exam?
um yeah, also the initial mistake that I made was I was looking to others, like to fit myself into other people's plans. maybe taking tons of tests or whatnot. But then what I was missing was where I was at really, and what did I need to get to that test. And that was a sort of reinvention that happened over the last 30 to 45 days. Especially when DJ, you send me out, okay, you need to go back, revisit your CR, you need to go revisit your quant, and that's like a huge ego hit. Like when you think you're really good at those things, and someone says you go and take a look back at that, and then you go and revisit those things, and then you see, okay, why because the numbers do tell a story. When you look at those numbers, you see, okay, there is something, and what is behind those numbers, why is that happening? And finding out a system that worked for me very specifically was getting crucial, and that was very introspective, asking myself a lot of questions. Okay, why was I making the mistakes? Why is that keeping on repeating? And why is that time issue? Asking myself a lot of those whys, and having good third outside perspective. And in that case, I mean, for those of you using e-GMAT, I would recommend to reach out, bombard e-GMAT with mails, and they have a really good customer service. So all of the mails I've received responses, and all of the mails from DJ definitely get a response. So feel invited to reach out to people to get that third perspective, because you often in your own world start to miss out things, and you need that third eye to say, okay, listen, that's how your numbers look like, and why? Like, then you can go back and question yourself, does it make sense to you or not?
Let's talk numbers and feedback. Let's talk numbers and feedback now. So yeah. Numbers, when you say numbers, I think Scholaranium. When you say feedback, I think, the RMP program or the mentorship program here at e-GMAT. Let's talk about Scholaranium for a bit. There's a lot of numbers there in Scholaranium, and we recently, we're going to launch Scholar 2.0, which is I'm probably the most excited person on the planet for it, because to equip a student with the arsenal to really understand where they're going wrong in their preparation is the prerogative of three people today. It's either your private tutor, it's either your mentor, or it's either yourself. The yourself bit never happens. It happens in 2% of the cases. And the rest of it, you're leaving it dependent on the third party. Do you want to do that if the third party is not invested in you? Maybe not, right? So you need something that gives you that kind of feedback, and which is why I'm super excited about Scholar 2.0. But let's talk about the old Scholaranium as well. There's a lot of data out there. How did you leverage that to kind of figure out, okay, where am I going wrong?
If I had to benchmark, so the sort of data that you get in the, it was just like, at that point when I had like a lot of tests, the only factor for me was that there was just 5 6 Sigma mocks, and that was like a bummer for me, because you get really, really rich data from the e-GMAT platform, and you don't get that outside. Like even with the official prep tests, you don't get like really good feedback. You almost get a ESR out of the Sigma mocks, and that's really useful. So you can see how you're progressing, how the difficulty level is, and these sort of analysis you don't get outside, right? And not just in the Sigma mocks, but more in the Scholaranium platform. One thing that I really used towards the later stages was the customized mocks, and like choosing the areas, and that was like phenomenal. I could see how much time how my time distribution was, how much time I was spending, and why I was spending that time, what is really happening, and why did I get it wrong. Identifying those areas, and just to note down patterns. Like I think DJ talked earlier about an error log, which I had been meaning to create since the beginning, but I was just too lazy to get about. I did create an error log, but mine was more synthetic. I just wrote down the patterns where the repeated patterns. But I would highly recommend keeping an error log. Just mark a question, keep the tag, and create a system that sort of works for you, and classify your mistakes. Like if is it a content gap? Is it maybe a simple thing like just being too confident and losing track of time? Having that 1 minute sense, the 2 minute sense is also something quite important. And knowing the areas that you're fairly confident in, and knowing the areas that you often tend to make this, especially in quant, when you think it's too easy, and that's when, like, spending 2 or 3 extra seconds, okay, really, um, and questioning, okay, what's behind that, really makes a big difference, because it can be easy question, it can also be a hard question with a trap, right? So
Yeah.
um, these are sort of things where having identifying your patterns help, like the patterns where you make mistakes help. And
Yeah.
yeah, coming back to the point,
Well,
like
I think the custom quizzing engine is something that you mentioned as well, right? It says a bunch of things. For example, if you take a custom quiz and you have 5 minutes left for the last three questions, on a normal day, you feel, I just rushed a little bit towards the end. It's not a big deal. But it's actually a really big deal. And the reason for that is if you're doing that in a 15, 18, 20 question quiz, imagine accentuating that effect to a 36 question quiz. You're going to not
mm,
be able to do 7 or 8 questions towards the end. And to be able
mm,
to visualize, okay, why did that happen? Is it because my CR tack time is high? Or is it
mm,
because I just took way too long in the beginning? Was I being overcautious, right? So if I have to characterize student behavior into like three big categories, the first is the student who is very cautious towards the beginning. Then there's a student who gets tired towards the 20th question in a 30 question quiz. And then finally, there's a student who always rushes towards the end. Once you understand this, like the reason why I can talk about these patterns in behavior is because I can see so much of data that tells me that this is how it is, and this is
mm.
how you fix it, right?
Okay.
And that's the value of what we kind of have. Let's talk about 10 days before your exam. Now this is the final few footsteps of your journey. What were you doing in your last 7, 10 days?
For me, the two things that was key for me through my entire journey was, like, I needed persistence throughout to keep my journey going, and develop that focus, and spending like full hour of 4 hour concentration, like at your peak capacity, was something that I had struggled with in the beginning, and I knew I had to change that.
How
Um,
do you build that up?
I generally built like good habits around myself. I put myself in situations like solving from smaller chunks. Initially, what I tried to do was always put myself against, like take a test, and then I'd get the same result. It was just going down and down and down. But I realized I don't have to run against the wall to get to the other side, right? To start building slowly, to just lay some bricks and stand on top, and more bricks and stand on top. So that really helped. Having just 10 questions focused, and then maybe increasing a little bit when I did that well. I had that confidence, I did that well. So slowly building up my concentration. I also had to block a space out. I took some tips from the stories others had shared, like how do you do the exam, creating that exam's seriousness, because oftentimes when I took the exam, I was not so serious about it. So for me, that was a personal sticking point, to recreate a very serious exam atmosphere, where I had that discipline to stick through the entire 4.5 hours. And secondly, what really helped me was also visualizing where I wanted to be, in terms of, like I mentioned, like the 1 minute timing. This was one of the first things that I picked up when I read the Manhattan Roadmap. I think that was a fabulous book to start off with in the beginning. The 1 minute in. So just like visualizing, and then getting that, subconsciously getting, okay, there's 1 minute and I need to be alert, and having that consciousness. Oh, I know it's very tempting. I know I can solve it, but then I don't want to spend. So I'll probably let it go and keep moving on. I am allowed. So giving myself that space of making for some mistakes, that room, really helped me. So that was very important in my last 10 days to get my exam. I was still not maybe 100% satisfied with my own ability scores on each other. I knew I could spend, but then I had to really shift my thinking. It was that exam date is here, and I have to be ready for the exam with whatever tools that I have. And so my thinking started to shift a bit, and I was looking at everything more holistically than looking at the smaller problems. So that is a big difference in my preparation. Before, when I was going back to the specific things, it didn't make sense like just 5 days before the exam to go and start learning something really new. I had to let go. Okay, it's fine. Give myself that comfort zone. It's fine. You have your tools. All you have to do is think more holistically. And that holistic approach was my focus. It didn't necessarily mean I needed to take. Initially, I thought, okay, maybe taking a lot more tests would make sense, but not necessarily. To give that space, I think I reached out also to e-GMAT to really understand what would make sense. And for me, in the end, what was really useful was not to bombard yourself with a lot of exams towards
Or
the.
questions, just incessantly practice towards the end, which is what a lot of people do, by the way, because that is ingrained in our system, right? So practice towards the end, like finish all questions, and you're gonna do well. I think that's very antithetical as well. What you mentioned is basically what we call test readiness, right? So it's about building up your mental rigor and stamina. 20, 25, 28, 30 questions. It doesn't come overnight, really. Frankly, it really doesn't come overnight. Um, the second part is of making sure that you understand things like letting go of questions. Now, this comes from actually building that test rigor. You understand what your pattern is as a student. So, for example, your pattern as a student is you want to get everything right. So you the questions and you focus on them and you waste a lot of time. And then you don't have enough time for the questions you actually have or can do, right? So I think every student has a set kind of behaviors, which is very easy to kind of comprehend if you look at data. It's very simple. It's just that simple. For example, the letting go thing. If I see a set of incorrect questions with very high takt times, you have that problem, and
Yeah.
it's easily fixable as well, right? But it takes about 21 days to develop a new habit. But this is one of the biggest habits that every bad test taker has. They never
Yeah.
let go of questions.
Yeah.
And I think this is above anything else. Okay, so given that you were not doing a lot, and I remember you took a mock as well, you didn't get a fantastically great score, the Sigma
No.
X mock. How did you how did you overcome that mentally? So not having a good mock score before your test, how did you overcome that mentally?
Um, so sticking to my process, I mean, trusting at that endpoint, I developed a fair sense of where I was, that understanding of where I was, and I had confidence that I could do. So in these custom quizzes, I was starting to reach a more mature score that I was looking at, and I knew very specifically like what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong, and the certain things that was like just understanding what is happening just gave me a lot of confidence. Okay.
Hmm.
And revisiting my score, so I'd scored like really low, like 600 and something in the Sigma.
260. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I took a prep also at that similar time, and I think I did 720 or something like that. And there was that small thing where I noticed, okay, a trajectory where I'm increasing. So I did that Six Sigma mocks, and I then took away, understood like really what I was doing wrong. And then with that confidence, I did that, and I saw that small increase. And then that was like a foolproof confidence for me to say, okay, on the right track, and I have the focus on the right things. I just need to stick to my game and just trust myself.
So
Um,
you were confident going into the test. You knew you're confident in your own abilities at the end of your entire journey. That's why you could
yeah.
go into the test and say, I'm going to do well. So before going into the test, were you imagining scoring a 750, or did it come to you as a little bit of a surprise?
I took actually this so this guy, I forgot his name. So he's a coach of Michael Jordan, and
Hmm.
I listened to some podcasts to just prepare myself before the exam,
Hmm.
and he says that
Is it
so
Dr.
when
Phil? I think I don't
it
remember.
could be Phil. I'm
Yeah.
so he says that when Michael Jordan he goes for the game, for every game, he's not focusing on the result as such. He's just focusing on putting the best effort. That's all the focus is. Like putting all your effort and bring your best self. And I stopped to think of the exam score. I was freaking out 3 4 days before the exam. I was like, what am I going to, what should I think, how should I set my expectations for the exam? I stopped thinking about my exam score and I just started to focus on my preparation. And that's all. And I gave myself the liberty. I just want you to go out and do your best. And we're going to think about the scores and everything later. That's all right. Whatever your score you're going to get, it's all right, right?
So it's like it's think like Michael Jordan before you get into the GMAT. So that's your advice.
Definitely, and it's a huge you're not stressed at all. And before all sort of things happen during before the exam, right? My exam was going to get cancelled, and there was this coach. I didn't even know if the exam was going to take place or not. They were like, oh, you can go and maybe you can come and check back later. And I just sat there, just calm, just focusing on what I knew, what I had to do, not focusing so much on the result, just focusing on yourself. That really helps. That's a big takeaway.
I think that's very true because I see so many students who do really well on mocks and they don't do as well on their tests because they're so hell bent on imagining that I want to score a 750. I want to score a 760. No student that I've ever worked with who has scored a 750 or 760, except for I think one or two actually. They actually knew they were going to score a 760. Um, Went into the exam thinking that I'm going to score a 750 or 760. They said, this is my ability. I know I can perform to this level. Let me just go and replicate that. Let me just replicate what I do on a daily basis. And I'm going to leave the rest to the algorithm. I'm not going to try to game the algorithm because, I mean, if you did, then you'd be a millionaire right now. But the point is, um, it is very important to do what you did. Focus on what you know instead of focusing on what you don't know. I think that's a very big takeaway too. We have some time left. Stanish, we're gonna bother you with a few questions that a bunch of students have asked.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of people have mentioned it. Phil, I'm
Phil
glad
Jackson.
that Phil Jackson, my last dance Netflix binge watching has worked. But yeah, I think it's a really good series, by the way, guys. If you ever want to take a break from your GMAT studies, please go watch The Last Dance. It's fantastic. You need to have that mindset. Find your Scottie Pippen as far as GMAT prep is concerned as well. There is no Michael Jordan without a Scottie Pippen. Okay, basketball reference is done. Let's talk about the questions that students have. How do you think about using scholarinium versus verbology? So Lucas has this question. Let's take this up as well. What are your thoughts on this, Danish? Using scholarinium versus the book, the verbology?
I mean, in the end, it really goes back to where you're at and what you want to write. If you want to maybe get a taste of what the exam level questions are going to look like, OG,
Hmm.
I mean, of Scholarinium also has it. You can put in those, but it's exactly what you're looking at. What Scholarinium gives you is data. Like you can get a feedback on your data, like how much time you spent on it. Otherwise, you have to do it manually. Maybe sit and write down and time yourself. Scholarinium readily gives you, and you can see it over a broad range. You can also keep track. So you do a test, you do the next test, you do the next test. You see your progress line. And the second aspect is the solutions from e-GMAT. So a problem that I found was whenever I went to the forums, I was like literally, I mean, I relearned everything, right? Like I prepared through different means. I had tried Manhattan. I then did Experts Global. That I took the test series, and I tried so many different books. But then I resonated with understanding the meaning, getting to the like the holistic center of everything, and understanding that for me works. And going back, Scholarinium had that, the questions really gave you explanations. Sometimes they were very long. So what I did was I used to skip and just get like Pareto. So I just realized, okay, I don't have to know every single thing. Just pick up what I really want. And
Hmm.
that
We
really
have
helped.
we have verbal solutions now, and Harsha and Stacy, Shraddha, when they look at this, they'll be very happy to hear this as well. That we have segmented the solution into parts that you would want to hear now. And
Right.
then this is for Kanupriya as well, because I think we never had that first. Now we have video solutions that go directly to that point and say that why is
Yeah.
B not the right option? And this is across the entire platform as well, right? So I think what you're mentioning are solutions probably the best that I've seen. And just to make sure that every student gets what they want from the solution, like you said about the forum space, it's about getting what you want, what what you want to understand. I think we've made that very streamlined and structured now, so that you don't really have to go searching. It's not like a treasure hunt anymore. It's what you need at the right time at the right place. So I think that's very valuable. So Harsha has asked the question, what was your split in 750? So it's Q50 V42, Harsha, and I will definitely get back to you over email as well. The reason why I haven't is because of this session. So post the session, Harsha, I will get back to you. So Roli has asked a question. Stanish, how did you prepare for AWA?
I just went through some online materials for how you structure your arguments. So the
Hmm.
argument, writing down assumptions, you do take it away from your CR, right? So you, what I try to do is I try to brainstorm as much as arguments as I can for the argument. Um, Close to getting as much as possible. I had goal of 10 for every AWA. I practiced whenever I did the full test. I made
Hmm.
it a point that I will take the AWA as well. And I like writing, but I did not, in my opinion, I did my AWA bad because I made the mistake of not proofreading it. So I made a lot of typos and my score went shot down. So don't make typos, don't make the same mistake. I was so keen on putting in all the arguments, stuffing with content. I just didn't have time in the end to like go through again and get rid of all the typos.
That's a big
And you need,
takeaway. I
yeah, you
agree.
need to make sure you have 5 minutes at the end just to go through and your content with your stuff. So that is my preparation. Basically,
Got it.
some online reading for how to structure your argument in AWA, and then
Hmm.
generating a lot of content before you even start your paragraph. Like spend 3 minutes writing
Hmm.
at least 10 different arguments, why you're for, against, and evidences, all of that.
Got it. So just for the other people in the audience here, so if you want to build your own personalized study plan, if you want to talk to your Scotty Pippen, so basically someone who's a mentor, just reach out to us at e-GMAT. We'd be happy to set up a call. If you just want to talk to us about your preparation, where you're at, what you want to do, where you want to go, just again, just we're going to share a link with you. Click on that, book a call. Feel free to do that, because the first step to really getting to your goals is reaching out for that support, reaching out for that feedback, and that's very important. So just click on the link, go book a call, build your own personalized study plan, and we'd be happy to help you. Do you have so guys? Do you have any more questions that we can take? Probably take another question or two. Otherwise, we can lock this down. So let's just wait for like 25, 30 odd seconds. Okay, so Lucas has another question. Hey, Lucas, by the way, hi. How would you compare your actual journey to the final GMAT versus the journey that we created for you? So, is it very different? Is it the same? Please be honest. I'm not prompting an answer here. What did it look like? What was your study plan versus what your actual GMAT journey?
The planning tool which I planned was completely different in the end for me. And it was also because on the data, like you always have a plan, and then when you get data back, and then you realize you have to change your plan. So for me, it was in the end quite different than what I planned in the beginning, and definitely what I had planned with the e-GMAT
And
tools
that was
also
a
in the beginning.
that was a function of the number of hours that you put in the beginning, and you never changed that. So obviously, that would definitely look different towards the end. But let's talk about the study plan that I shared with you. So in the last 30 to 45 days, how similar did that look to your GMAT journey?
I don't understand the question. GMAT journey, as in the whole.
Just the last 30, 45 days versus, versus what I had shared with you in terms of this is what you need to do next. This is what you need to do in terms of feedback.
So what I planned was I would get done with these concepts and take just time for doing the tests in the last weeks and just go through it and have that clear space in my head. But clearly that was not the case because DJ told me you're not test ready. And I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? I got my exam coming. And that really helped. So DJ gave me like a prompts where he looked at my data and told me, okay, focus on this first, focus on that. And that was like checkpoints for me. At least I wanted to clear that. So I adapted my plan to that, making sure that I hit that before moving on to anything else. So I sort of put my plans to take a lot of tests on hold. So I just focused back on getting to the basics and really understanding. And that's when I talked about laying the bricks. So increasing that capacity slowly. Same thing in quant. Same thing happened in quant. And the last week, I think I took, the last Six Sigma mock was a week or week and a half before. And then I took one GMAT prep, and that was all.
So I think the funny thing here is plans change, right? And that's the beauty. When you're building a study plan, it has to evolve over time. And that's exactly what you need as a student to say that if I'm not test ready right now, what should I do? Or if I'm faltering here, what should I do? So I think plans have to be ever evolving. And that's something that you need to keep in mind. So I think let's wrap it up for the day. Stanish, again, thank you for being such a special guest for this GMAT Club session. Again, on a separate note for everybody out there in India, please stay strong, please stay healthy, please stay at home. Uh, Again, reach out to us at e-GMAT if you want to talk about anything. Reach out to me if you want. We're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, DJ. Thanks, guys. And yeah, stay strong.
Yeah. Thanks, Anish. Take care.